I don't need it. I have no slides. No. No.
Is that okay?
That's all good. Kia ora. Start the timer. Right. Or not. Leave it. It's fine. So I'm Siouxsie Wiles, and I'm a university academic. And growing up, I didn't know what that was. So I come from a working class background. I'm not originally from New Zealand. I'm from the UK. And I don't think I knew anybody who'd been to university, but being working class, my parents, they knew I was bright, and so for them, me going to university was a really important thing. So I kind of knew I was going to go to this mythical place that I didn't actually know what it was. And when I got there, I just was like, oh my God, it's a place where people let you learn, and that's really, really cool. And then I never left. And so the job I have now, I didn't fully, well, I still don't fully understand it, but apart from the kind of making things glow in the dark. So as a university academic, I am basically on this contract called a 40-40-20. So what that means is that 40% of my time is spent on research, so the science bit. 40% of my time is spent on teaching, so lecturing undergraduates and various things like that. And then 20% on service, which is kind of this weird sitting on committees and making decisions about stuff, things. So what I want to talk about a little bit is the research bit. So for 2 days a week, my job is to do research, which is really, really exciting because as an academic, I get to kind of choose what it is that I'm interested in, which is basically nasty bacteria and making them glow in the dark. The problem is that even though I'm paid to do that, my institution doesn't actually pay me to do that. That doesn't make sense. So I have to find all the money to do the science. I have to write all these funding applications to basically try and convince some people to give me some money to do the science. And so I'm not alone. This is basically the way academia works. But what it means is that essentially a lot of the research, the science that's done, is being written, the projects are being kind of come up by university academics, they're writing their applications, and then what gets funded is kind of dependent on the people who are sitting on those panels making those decisions. So essentially, who's in the room writing the applications and who is deciding who gets the money kind of determines what gets done. Okay, so the reason this is really important is that I want to talk about HPV. Does everybody know what HPV is? Yeah, so it's a virus that's sexually transmitted, causes cervical cancer. I'm going to say some words that might make people blush. It also causes cancers of the penis, the vagina, the vulva, and the anus. And so it's a pretty big deal, right? So in 2006, there was a vaccine called Gardasil that was licensed by the US Food and Drug Administration. And it's basically given to kind of preteens, so before they're sexually active, to prevent infection with these HPV viruses, to stop them from getting these kinds of cancers. And it was originally given to girls to prevent cervical cancer, and then they hoped that they would not spread the virus to the boys. But anyway, now it's kind of licensed to everybody. And so when it was released, it was basically a vaccine. So there's lots of different types of this HPV virus. And the vaccine really worked against the two types, 16 and 18, that are thought to cause 70% of the cases of cervical cancer around the world. Okay. So then in 2014, a study got done. And it was basically a study of a few hundred women in the US, and they looked at, so basically women who had an abnormal pap smear, so this means that they're kind of on their way to getting cervical cancer, and they looked at what types of HPV virus they were infected with. And what they found was that, yes, 70% of the cases in white women were caused by viruses 16 and 18. But, shock horror, 70% of the cases in African American women weren't caused by those two. In fact, they have a completely different kind of profile. And what that means is that the vaccine that is being developed and being given to African American women doesn't protect them from the types of HPV that causes them disease. All right, 3 minutes. So, that sucks, right? That is like so bad, right? This is what happens when when the wrong people, well, not the wrong people, when we don't have diverse people researching questions, doing science, when this is what happens, you end up with vaccines that don't work for everybody. And this idea that 70% of cervical cancer cases reflect the cases that happen in white women, right? And this is not just cervical cancer, it will be all sorts of things. Okay, so this has to change, right? This is just like bad. This is not right. Okay, so I've got a visual aid. All right. So this little box, I will fiddle to take it out, but I'll end up dropping stuff. So this is my cup. This is a little device called a menstrual cup. So for those people who menstruate, you might have heard of it. It's basically a little cup that you put inside you to collect blood during your period. And I want to use this little device to try and figure out if we can do research and science better. So I essentially want to figure out how can we bring together scientists, researchers, whether that's from universities or wherever, from around the world, with people who have questions about stuff. So in this case, there's women who are not just women, there are people who menstruate who are kind of interested in whether if they use a cup, are they more likely to get thrush? Or if they use a cup, are they less likely to have cramps? What I'm really interested in is, are they going to get toxic shock syndrome? So that's a really serious but very, very rare infection. These have been called safe because they were studied on 500 young women in Africa, and none of them got toxic shock in the 11 months that they were studied. But you would need 25,000 women in the study to see one case. So I kind of think that's not really been done properly, right? So I want to answer these questions, and it's not just me. When I wrote a blog post about this, I had 500 women get in touch going, oh, I've got this question and I've got that question. So I want to see if we can figure out how to make it work, that we can bring together researchers who can do certain types of science. We can bring together people who are interested, have questions to ask about their health or the health of their families. And then how can we come up with a research agenda, and how would we fund it? How can we figure out how to do the science without it being all about somebody like me having an idea, which is then decided on or not decided on by people that possibly are like me in a room? How can we do this better? So watch this space. Or I think we're going to kind of crowdfund it. We're going to kind of crowd source it. We're going to get people together. If you are a person who menstruates and you're interested, just sort of watch this space, because we need people all around the world to kind of get involved, so that it's not just a bunch of white women in Aotearoa who are kind of, figuring this out, that it's relevant to everybody. So, yeah, I think we can do things differently, and I really want to try. Thank you very much for your attention.
Awesome. Thanks, Siouxsie.